Hello, I'm Sam, and we got Cryptovestor here. Welcome to Cryptovestor's roundup of the week, Alpha Corner. What's up, sir?
How you doing, buddy?
I'm great. Exciting times. The Alpha is back. We had kind of a slow week last week or the last 2 weeks, but it's back in full force now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is.
Apparently, the market woke up. We've been doing BAMM content since the Infinity Pools episode that we had all the way back in, I believe, like May or June or something like that. And now people are just starting to figure out the power of what's coming with BAMM.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I just saw like what was teased out last week. I think it was the Flywheel guys that did it, and just exciting to see this whole concept of using the X times Y equals K. AMM formula is kind of like the strategy behind or the mechanism behind BAMM. So that's kind of the leak for the week.
Yeah. So let's just break things down here. So the thing that's being opened up is that normally when you put assets into a Uniswap LP or any type of AMM, really, it could be Curve, could be Balancer, really, it doesn't matter. What happens is those assets essentially are custodied in the BAMM contract they're custodied in that LP contract and they just can't go anywhere, right?
Right. They're locked in, sort of.
Yeah.
They're not going anywhere. They're
exactly.
in those pools.
Exactly. So let's think of like a pool that we have on Curve, maybe like the Frax USDC or potentially some of the other large pools, which have millions of dollars in TVL here. But all that TVL is stuck there. Right. And it's just kind of illiquid.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's static capital, right? It's not being utilized to the fullest, and I think that's what BAMM is unlocking, for Frax, and it's just it's exciting, I mean, I think that BAMM is going to allow it's going to give, well, first of all, it's going to give Frax a facility to be able to borrow assets. And use those assets for any potential DPEG events for Frax, God forbid something like that were to happen. It allowed to the AMM, to the users, the depositors, it looks the same to them. They're just depositing, they're earning a yield, right? Sam did mention that there would be bribe mechanics involved there too. So that's kind of interesting that, bribe mechanics are, for the first time implemented with UniV3 code. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
But then, like you were saying, it has that unlock, where, those assets can be borrowed against. And I think that's kind of novel.
Yeah. And the thing is that Frax has always had locked liquidity. That's been a core function of the protocol since day zero, right? It's always been there. But the problem is that all that locked liquidity just is stuck. Like Frax may have, I think, like $120 million worth of locked liquidity on its balance sheet, but it can't do anything with that. And all the people who have put their liquidity there don't really, it's just kind of stuck. It can't really do anything. So what BAMM is going to open up is you're going to have literally hundreds of millions of dollars of new liquidity available to be utilized within the entire crypto economy. It's not Frax specific.
No,
it can be leveraged for any pool. You asked Sam this week if it was permissionless. He said yes.
Yeah.
And it could be meme coins. It could be really anything.
Yeah. So I see a world where, if this launches on, and it makes sense that they would first launch it on Fraxchain, right? So let's say Fraxchain launches in early January, maybe, BAMM comes shortly after that. You have a situation where you have a ton of liquidity that's going to want to migrate over there. They're going to be able to earn yield. They're going to be able to supply their assets. People are going to be able to borrow against them, and it's just going to, and without any fear of liquidation. That's the key point, and I think that's what that model, which is so elegant, right? Because it's using that curve, right? To basically, because the debt is essentially denominated in the LP token, so that LP token for the most part remains fairly static, doesn't move or fluctuate too much. So there's a sort of a mathematical guarantee that you're not really going to get liquidated as long as the numbers are within a certain range.
Right. And it opens up a ton of like trading possibilities. If you think about how let's just take a meme coin, right? Because this is the most obvious example
Sure,
because
go
it
ahead.
moves a ton. Let's say you have like, I don't know, Frax Bull meme coin.
Pepe or
Yeah.
Frax,
Frax Bull 101.
Shiba.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And it's paired against ETH or USDC in Fraxchain in the BAMM. Okay, so let's say it's run up a ton. It's sitting at $100 million. You're now sitting on a lot of this token, right?
Right.
What you can do is you can essentially like add it into the AMM, either like Uniswap V2 or V3 AMM, and then potentially you could even borrow against it. I don't know if the person adding the LP could also borrow the collateral as well too.
That's a question. Yeah, I'm not really sure if that's how it would work, but it could.
Yeah, but then you could essentially like borrow out whatever position you have and then sell that back into the market. And now you could short whatever meme coin you want, which we really haven't had the ability to do for. You had to like wait for like a centralized exchange to open a perpetual future for it.
Yeah.
And it's huge.
It's huge because it's now, like you said, it's made the AMM more useful.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many other people are going to copy that AMM. You know, I mean, it's, if UniV3 code is the most forked code out there, it's probably going to catch really, it's going to be huge because no one's going to want to. It's a liquidity unlock, and so I think it's going to be a big deal.
And also, I think it almost replaces a lot of the function of what Fraxland provides for. So obviously, Fraxland is super important, and I think Sam has actually mentioned this in chat a couple of times. Where once BAMM comes out, I think the preference will be for people to deposit funds into the BAMM contracts, into these BAMM LPs, rather than depositing it into Fraxland. These are just my own opinions. I'm just
I can see a world where
but think about it like this, right? So let's say you have ETH, or we have that Frax ETH contract that's on Curve, right? There's $150 million between two pools there, and people probably want to use that to borrow. Now there is a Fraxland contract to borrow against that Frax ETH LP, I believe. But with BAMM, now you could essentially just borrow the ETH out of the LP, like
out of the pool,
exactly.
Directly.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
So
you don't need a separate product to sort of do what it's sort of like Frax Swap is, or like Frax Lend is sort of that
integrated into the AMM.
Yeah, it's built right into the AMM. So I can see this being I think Sam was right. BAMM is a 0 to 1 innovation. It's probably the next big thing since UniV3.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because there's always been talk about like AMM LPs don't make enough money based on like other dynamics. Like if you're a big market maker and you're deploying funds into an AMM, there's something called like loss versus rebalancing. I don't want to get into it very like deeply because it's a super complex topic, but essentially it says that like you like as a liquidity provider, you always have to choose where you're going to put your collateral. And so this is either on a centralized exchange or in a DEX or somewhere. And the unfortunate part about DEXs is that while they work great and they always have liquidity that you can trade through, they don't have the ability to either change the spread or change the fees. And so the amount of fees or yield that an AMM LP earns is somewhat lacking sometimes.
Yeah, especially, I know we've talked about that before, right? Where UniV3, it's questionable how much money a UniV3 LP is actually making. So I could see a world where a lot of that liquidity that's in a UniV3 pool would want to migrate over to a BAMM because they're going to earn additional incentives, higher yields, and the funds are going to be more liquid.
Yeah,
you can borrow against it. Why would you want your money locked up in UniV3 if you can have it in the BAMM and utilize that just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly. So like you earn 5% on the ETH Frax ETH pair in Curve, but with BAMM enabled, there's potentially maybe like another 2 to 3, 4, 5% depending on the interest rates that you could collect over the course of a year just by providing liquidity.
And on top of that, Sam said there's bribe mechanics involved. So if there's an FXS gauge, imagine a world where, say, Frax wants to incentivize Frax, I don't know, it could be Frax USDC or it could be Frax ETH, it could be or Frax against Frax ETH.
Right.
So there's so many different possibilities. If they want to incentivize those specific pools, they can submit bribes or incentives to the pools And now it's suddenly the Unity 3 code is now suddenly very, very profitable for LP providers.
Right, right. And so the thing that we learned this week is that there is a Unity 3 deployment coming, apparently. That's what you said?
Well, it's not that it's a Unity 3 deployment.
Or
I
something
think
like it,
we
right?
just mentioned that it was based on the Unity 3 code. It wouldn't surprise me if some type of Unity 3 deployment happened, maybe not from Frax, maybe it's another team, whatever. I'm sure that code will be utilized in a lot of different ways in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it wouldn't surprise me if it was built into a normal DEX, like a Unity 3 style DEX.
Yeah, I think Sam has mentioned a couple of times before that there is concentrated liquidity that's coming to FraxSwap. It's probably been put on the back burner because of all the curve deployments, but potentially with BAMM, it will necessitate the addition of concentrated liquidity.
Well, here's an interesting take. What if, BAMM sort of morphed into something like a newer version or an updated version of FraxSwap? Because it kind of makes sense. Like FraxSwap is sort of the Unity 3 code, right? But now you have this unlock, this great unlock for liquidity. I can see that living on even on the mainnet, right? On Ethereum mainnet, and on Fraxchain. And then suddenly FraxSwap becomes a lot more useful.
Right. Yeah.
So I could see something like that happening. I know, Sam didn't confirm anything like that, but that certainly makes sense.
Yeah, I could see that as well too. So lots of things to come. The other piece of alpha that we heard this week was that Fraxchain Testnet is live.
Yeah, unbelievable. Unbelievable. I did not expect that. That means we're so much closer than we expected. So yeah. I would expect an early January launch for that. That's amazing. And again, like, let's tie it in together. Like, if this happens and BAMM is successful and attracts a lot of liquidity, a lot of that locked liquidity in BAMM is going to be put on the Frax balance sheet. So the CR, the collateralization ratio, is going to go to 100% a lot sooner than we expect. And the fees are going to start rolling out to the EFXS holders, which I think is the goal,
Yeah, exactly. And then anybody who wants to build a perpetual exchange on top of Fraxchain can do it, and then incentivize it through bringing those locked pairs on.
I wouldn't surprise me if we saw like a GMX or something like that quickly go to a Fraxchain and do something like that. Yeah, for sure. Especially with the incentives that are happening there. So I expect that to happen soon.
Well, I have a lot of ideas about this,
yeah,
and things that could come through, and like all the locking mechanics could open up a ton of stuff. I don't want to speculate too much because I may just be totally wrong, but we'll see as things come out.
Yep.
I
will be prying everything I can from as much as possible. So yeah, as I get information, I'll try to provide it and write it in my articles.
And we're less than 60 days out from Fraxchain if the team is to be said that the January is the date for it.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
So totally incredible. Coming up January for Fraxchain, potentially BAMM comes out in January as well too. We'll see.
Maybe Fraxchain V2.
Fraxchain V2 probably in February or March.
Staking reward, the staking yield will boost up because a lot of that Frax ETH is going to be migrated over to Fraxchain. So you're going to see those yields go up, and you're going to see a lot more minting happening.
Yeah, and then Frax bonds, I'm like almost certain it's going to be any day.
Yeah, I'm kind of waiting on that. I was surprised. I thought that'd be done sooner, but I guess
I think it's done. I think they're just doing a last round of audits, getting everything set up.
Yeah.
Because I'm almost 100% certain that Frax bonds will come out with like in the same time period that Fraxchain comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think 2024 is going to be one hell of a year for Frax.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's seen in the Frax shares price.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think people have started noticing it.
New paradigms.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Thank you everybody for tuning in. This is Cryptovestor's Alpha Roundup with the one and the only Cryptovestor.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me on, and look forward to being on here again. Thank you.
See you guys next week.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.